Let me see if I can't. I don't know how to do this whole display thing where I can. Vass, do you know how to make my screen front and center? Wait, I think I do. Well, no, that's Keith.
No, that's my ugly face. I know what I look like. Wait, my beard's out of line. Hold on.
I'm trying to figure this out. No, that's me. How do I do this? Oh, I just did that. Oh, there we go. If you can see that, it's Liberty First Foundation and the Range Report, sponsored by Optima and 5150 Rifles. Dude, this is like really, really heavy. What is this made out of?
It's an aluminum plate, so you know that we have an announcement coming next week. Here, actually probably this weekend. Obviously, can't say it yet because it hasn't happened. But in the process of doing things for that announcement, we decided we want to do something to include you in that, and include Liberty First Foundation. And as a thank you again, all your support, the foundation's support, and everything you guys do for the Second Amendment community. If you look closely at that recreation, redo of your artwork, the magwell on the AR says "We the People." Your coin actually has the same artwork. You will need magnifying glasses, but the magwell still says "We the People." I assure you, Frank, I made sure that no one slipped any New Jersey stuff into the artwork, as I did all the artwork personally.
This is a 5-year
against everybody's wishes. I did not put anything New Jersey in there. Lori, you're welcome. But again, we just wanted to do something, let you know you're part of the family. We consider you family. Everything you guys talk about on the show, everything you do to support us, we just wanted you all to know that we really appreciate it. It from the bottom of our hearts.
Well, this is. I have a very specific few things in my life that I consider treasured, and this is going to be at the top of the pile. This is absolutely beautiful. I cannot thank you guys enough. The rest of the guys, I'm sure, thank you as well. That means a lot. It really does. It means a lot more than you know. Because listen, folks, I don't know if you've never been involved in the Second Amendment industry. It is probably one of the most cutthroat, dishonest group of people you could ever meet when it comes to the corporate side. You know, when people say they're going to do something, they don't do it. There's so many people get burned, they get burned out, they get burned up. Keith and 5150 and Optimum are the most stellar, standout people I have ever met in this industry, and their products are the best in the world. And I don't say that because I have a relationship with them. My relationship stems from them because of how impressed I was with not only the products, but how they do business and how they deal with people and what they believe. And from that has grown a tremendous brotherhood. And I cannot thank you guys enough.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do, Derrick. I've heard about your situation. I have nothing but the deepest sympathies for everything you've gone through. If you ever need anything from us, you can talk to Frank. He knows how to get a hold of us, and we're there for you.
Same to you guys, man. Reach out anytime, and appreciate all the excellent work you guys have been doing in fighting for our Second Amendment, our natural God-given rights to protect and defend ourselves. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank. We do have some connections. So again, feel free to reach out to Frank, get in touch with me, and we'll put you in touch with those connections. Jan, nice to see you as usual. Mike Vaz, nice to see you. Has been a while. But we just wanted to be part of this, Frankie. You deserve it. And you are a part of our family, officially or unofficially, however you want to view it. We don't care. Your family.
No, it's official. Brother, love you guys. Get back to your concert. Enjoy the show. Give everybody a hug and a kiss for me.
I will, brother.
All right. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, man.
Keith Berry, 5150 Rifles, Optimum Parts Company.
See y'all.
Oh, this is Derrick. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to live through that.
No, that was I enjoyed it, man. It shows to me that I mean, you guys have a personal, a great relationship. I think it was pretty cool to see that live on the air.
Listen, we have come across a lot of people while we're doing what we're doing, and it's true what I just said. This industry has got a lot of people in it that, if you remember Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, when the guy is wrestling with Indiana Jones on the boat, and he asks him, he says, do you seek the cup of Christ for his glory or for yours? It's a very poignant thing to think about, because there's a lot of people that they get into certain industries, or they get into certain political arenas or something like that, because they're using it as a vehicle for their own personal advancement. They're using that cause and tying themselves onto it so that they can propel their own dreams forward.
Yep.
Everything that we do, and everybody that we associate with, and everything that we do as an organization, we do to try and propel the movement forward. And we don't care whoever gets the credit. We just want good things to happen. We want the right things to happen. We want the right people to be in the right places at the right time to get the ball moving for the advancement of freedom and liberty. And what we do is like I say, it's never been about us. It's never been about us. We do so much stuff behind the scenes that we'll never get credit for, that no one will ever know about, and we don't care.
Yep.
We don't care, because it moves the agenda forward, and as long as we're out there to try and protect somebody's rights and preserve them, then that's credit enough for us. So, but Keith and his group, that group of people over there, top notch, top notch. And you and I will talk. There might be some opportunities for you to have some collaborative efforts over there to help you with your campaign.
Sounds
Speaking
like a plan.
of campaign, Michael Vasquez, Dragon of the Bronx, Scourge of the Five Boroughs, AOC's nemesis.
No sound.
His microphone is off.
Nope.
Got no sound, brother. No sound at all. No sound bites at all. No sound bites allowed. So we can't even get sound out of the guy with no sound bites. Oh, we're batting 1,000 tonight, aren't we, ladies and gentlemen? All right,
Technical difficulties.
All right, so Derrick, let's ask you a couple. Aside of J6, give me the top 3 things right now that differentiates you in the primary that you're involved in versus your counterpart.
I'll give you a couple of examples, but it really all comes back to what I would consider one major issue is I'm America first, and my opponent is not America first. She's a globalist, warmongering neocon. She's voted to send billions and billions of our tax dollars to Ukraine while our own people in this country are suffering. I mean, we got major issues here. And so on top of that, I support freedom and individual freedom and liberty. My opponent supported the mandates and the lockdowns and voted to force our military members to receive the jab if they wanted to continue their career in the military, which is obviously something that I'm opposed to as well. And so I think it really just comes down to I'm a Freedom Caucus, liberty-minded individual, and she is a very moderate and who votes with the Democrats roughly 35 to 40% of the time.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Now we can hear you.
It's something with StreamYard here. Sorry. And I was trying to say before, I apologize for being late. My dog has had some medical issues, and so the last 2 hours I've been out with him. So I apologize for the delay. It may have been said already, but just as a confirmation, Derrick, you've already been elected in the past, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the reason you're running now is in reference to January 6th, correct?
Partly, yeah. So I mean, I was elected to the state house in 2020. I was the
Right.
first Republican to win my district in over 98 years. I won in a landslide. I never had any desire to run for federal office. So I mean, I definitely wanted to be involved locally and state But so in West Virginia, we have what's called citizen legislators.
Mhm.
So if you're elected to the state house or the state senate in West Virginia, it's only a 60-day session. So outside of those 60 days, you're a normal citizen, if you will. And I enjoyed that. I wanted to just, be a youth coach and be there for my kid. I got 4 kids. I never had any desire to leave and go to DC or any of those things. But it was after January 6th, and they drugged my family and I into the middle of the swamp, if you will, and tried to destroy our lives. That's when I was like, well, I'm already in the middle of the swamp now. I might as well fight my way back out. So that is what kind of took me from the state to the federal politics, if that makes sense.
It does. And I'm trying to establish something. I just want, so if you'll go with me here.
Yeah.
Because I want to track this for the people who aren't aware. Because if you go to NBC, it's specious. There's almost no information actually talking about this. There's a lot of rhetoric, but not a lot of details. So I want to cover that with you. January 6th, you were at the Capitol. You videotaped yourself.
Yep.
Now, and as a consequence, along with 1,200 Americans at this point, we now know there's 40,000 hours of video. We've seen 4,000 hours of video. 99% of it is nonviolent. The bigger thing is you were given a charge and you were convicted of that charge. What was that charge?
So mine is very unique. So I was one of the first people arrested for January 6th. I was arrested 2 days later on January 8th. They didn't really know what they're doing at the time. All they knew was I was an elected Republican. They had to arrest me and figure it out from there. So I was originally charged with 2 misdemeanors. Then they came back a couple months later, added 2 more misdemeanors. Then they offered me a verbal plea deal of choose your misdemeanor. We'll drop all the other charges. I said, I want to see this in writing, send it over. Then they withdrew that plea offer and then hit me with a 1512 obstruction of official proceeding, which is a 20-year felony. So now all of a sudden I was facing 24 years in prison. Ended up pleading to the civil disorder charge and served 3 months in federal prison. And I did 8 days of that in solitary confinement because I refused the jab while they were holding me hostage.
Okay. Now, I say all of that to be very clear. At any point, did they charge you with insurrection?
No.
Did they charge you with treason?
No.
Aiding and abetting enemies of America?
No.
Okay. The reason why I ask each and every one of these questions is we wanted to make very clear for people. You were initially charged with misdemeanors, which was then bumped up as the media pressure increased.
Correct.
And in every case, no matter what charge was placed in front of you, none of them would have led to your disqualification by the 14th Amendment. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. And not only for myself, that would go for all 1,200 plus defendants. Not a single person has ever been charged of any of the things that you asked me about.
Okay. Because I think that's one of the most critical things
in
the race that's going to be used to inform and misinform the public. Because again, if you go to NBC and their coverage of this, national coverage of this, they'll say you were charged with a federal charge. They won't say what it is.
Of course, yeah.
And they'll say that you served 3 months, but they won't say what was the full sentence. They won't say that you weren't charged with insurrection. And there are several websites that are more than happy to talk about the fact that you've been barred or attempted to be barred by the 14th Amendment, but that you never fell under the 14th Amendment restriction for someone who was charged with insurrection. Just never happened.
That is correct. So CREW, CREW, it's the same group that they're funded by George Soros. It's the same group that's going after President Trump, trying to keep President Trump off the ballot in these states as well. They, when I first announced I was running for Congress, put out a statement and reached out to the Secretary of State's office, tried to claim, I was ineligible based on the 14th Amendment, all these things. And the attorney for the West Virginia Secretary of State's office responded publicly that, to your point, that I was never charged, let alone convicted of insurrection, and that did not apply to me, and that I was eligible to be on the ballot unless they wanted to try to charge me of that. And so I think the reason they haven't come after me in the courts here in West Virginia is they know that there's no way that they would find a jury that would be dumb enough to go along with their stuff here in West Virginia, their left-wing extremism, and actually convict me on that charge. And therefore, they would lose in the courts of West Virginia, and that would split the lower courts, which would actually in turn harm them in their attempts of removing President Trump from the ballot in other states.
Right. You would be the precedent, and therefore
Correct.
that precedent would be used, not just President Trump, but in fact, all 1,200 individuals that are going through this process. And in particular, sidebar, J6, we know that there are a couple hundred individuals who are still awaiting trial and have been held without charges. It's something I'm very much against. But I wanted to give you a chance to address what's been put in the media and what's not necessarily being told to voters. I think it's incredibly important. So I thank you for that. I hope you didn't take it as me being a bad guy.
No, not at all. Before you got here, I told him I'm an open book, man. You guys can ask me anything you want. Just be relaxed, have fun. Doesn't matter. You don't want to worry about any of that with me.
Yeah, I'm the political guy. So I'm known to be tough but fair. So throwing that out the window. So we've established you are qualified to run as an American citizen like any other American citizen. That there are major issues with the claims they're making against you. Let me ask another question about J6, then we can move forward to life. Did you commit an act of violence?
No, I was never even accused. Not only was I never charged, I was never accused of any violence or destruction that day. I never even saw any violence or destruction that day. I was on. So it's important for people to know, if you weren't there, it's a big building for people who's never been there before. I was on the east side of the building. One of the dumbest and smartest things I've ever done in my life is I live streamed the entire event. So it's all on video for people to watch for themselves. All the violence and destruction that people have seen on the news was on the west side of the building. And the majority of that was centered around the west tunnel entrance area. I was on the opposite side of the building. To get from where I was at to the violence and destruction people have seen on TV was over a half a mile walk around the building to get there, because I was in the middle on the east side of the building. But for really quick for me, I walked through an open set, and once again, this is all on video. I walked through an open set of doors. I immediately go over to a police officer. I say, "Thank you for your service. God bless you, sir." He gives me a friendly fist bump, inviting me into the building. I'm then heard on video chanting freedom, and I immediately start reminding everyone, no destruction of property, no vandalizing. These are artifacts. This is our house. Take care of it. I spent less than 10 minutes inside the public rotunda area, turned around, walked out the same set of doors I entered, and that's what led me to facing 24 years in prison. That's how crazy this whole situation is.
Okay. And I do want to point, it is a matter of fact that the east entrance is noted by all media sources that the police did. Capitol Police opened the door there in that section, did invite people to come in, and there is part of the 4,000 hours of video that have been released. We do see, and it was recorded by media at the time, that people were freely flowing in. Police were allowing them in and had no problems. Very different than what people have seen sensationalized on the West. So I do want to note that is a correct fact. It's not hyperbole. Fine. All that, let's throw that aside. So that's not relevant to the position you're running for today. The position you're running for today is very critical, looking at the economy, looking at international affairs, looking at the division within our nation, this and the jab being examples of that. What do you think that you could do in representing West Virginia?
Well, the thing I tell everyone is I hate it when politicians make promises that they can't keep. And, I have ideas and plans, and I'd be happy to discuss those. But I make sure everyone knows I'll be one of 435 people in the House. I can't force the other people to vote for the things that I want. So the one promise I tell everyone is I'm not running to make friends. I'm not running to make a career out of this. The one thing I don't need anyone's help to do is to kick in the front door and expose the corruption in D.C. And so that's the big thing. And as far as the people of Southern West Virginia, this is one of the reddest districts in the entire country. And right now, we do not have a strong conservative voice. This This is a district where we deserve like a Matt Gaetz or a Marjorie Taylor Greene, someone who's going to stand on the national stage and beat the drum of freedom, not only for our district in southern West Virginia, but for every single conservative across this country. That's what we're missing right now. That's what we need. That's what I'm going to bring to the table. In terms of some of the policies, I think everybody is aware of the border. What I would do is on day one is I would propose a simple one page, one paragraph, whatever resolution that would officially declare an invasion on our southern border. Don't call for anything else. Just simply get it on the record as this is an invasion. If we could get that, then we can go back to the table and say, look, you guys just agreed that we have an invasion. Now let's do something about it. Let's send in the military, send in the National Guard, whatever we got to do, secure our border by any means necessary. In terms of the inflation, West Virginia is an energy producing state. We got to get rid of these ridiculous EPA regulations that are holding our energy back, not just in West Virginia, but across this country. Unleash American energy would help with the inflation and bring good jobs back to our country. It would lower the cost of goods and it would really help with the inflation side of things. But I'll tell you, the biggest issue that not a lot, I mean, some people are talking about it, but I don't think most people in Congress fully are grasping, or even the American people are truly understanding, is the weaponization of government. Congressman Jim Jordan put out a tweet about 2 weeks ago now that stated they have confirmed that any American citizen who purchased a Bible has been placed on a list and the government is tracking you. And so we now know that. And then also anyone who followed President Trump on Twitter, this is before Elon Musk purchased it, the FBI requested a list. We're talking 80-something million people. They've been placed on a list for the government to track them. We are under attack right now by our own government. I think I bring a unique experience. And after everything I've went through myself, I'd like to bring that to Congress and combat this and try to prevent what happened to myself from happening to other American citizens through, as we move forward as a country.
Okay, I'm going to kick it back to everyone else in 1 second. You just cited two sources, two bits of information I'm not familiar with in terms of the Bible and the access to records in Twitter. I do know certain records have been requested, but not the full, the numbers you're mentioning. Can you tell me, what are the two sources?
Congressman Jim Jordan, so he put out a tweet, like I said, it's about 2 weeks ago now, is in January. He put out a tweet, and so anyone who purchased items from Dick's, it's all in the kind of the same tweet and the same release. So if you shopped at Dick's Sporting Goods, just buying camping gear or whatever, they got your information. But in that same release, they mentioned that if you purchased a Bible, then the government got your information and placed you on a list. And here's the thing, man, when it comes to January 6th, people don't fully, I mean, they understand what the government is doing to us. People, and you don't know what you don't know. It's not anybody's fault. The media doesn't do a good job covering this. What people need to be aware is it's the banks, man. They're the dangerous ones. So I'm debanked. I can't get a bank account at a major banking institution. I can't get a loan. I can't get a credit card. I can't get any of these things. But furthermore, the banks turned over all of the financial data for anyone who was in the DC region within a few days of January 6th. So there were people, and the airlines also turned over this information without warrants, just turned over a mass thing of data to the government to put people on lists. So people were placed on a list. There was one person who was there for a job interview, didn't even go to protest, was placed on a list. There was another person who was in DC region for a funeral, was placed on a list and being tracked. I've been on the Quad S list, which is the quiet skies, the highest classification you can have and still fly on an airplane. And a lot of these people have been placed on that as well. Yep. There you go.
That's the Jim Jordan. So again, we like to verify. We like to.
And I appreciate it. I wish everybody did that. Absolutely. Yeah.
And when I'm not familiar with something, I check immediately. And we are able to verify Jim Jordan did put that out. He is speaking specifically of Dick's Pro Bass, and he did, in fact, mention the Bible specifically as one of the religious documents, and he did provide the documentation from Congress, as people can see there. So
just to clarify real quick, Dick's and Bass Pro Shops are not the same entity.
Sorry, my error there. Thank you for correcting.
Dick's Sporting Goods is a New York-based sporting goods shop that no longer even sells firearms. So you ain't gonna forget me shopping in Dick's Sporting Goods anyway.
Yeah.
So
thank you
for
correcting me, Frank. And again, And this is what we do here. We make sure we get it as right as possible. So there you go.
Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's are now the consortium, and I believe that they're headquartered in Tennessee by the big pyramid down there, which I plan on going to this summer at some point.
But this, either way, though, this surveillance of American citizens right now by our own government should concern everyone. This is ridiculous how we are being treated in our own country right now. This is something you'd expect from a communist regime, and that's what we're living under right now in America. It's very concerning.
Let me toss back to my co-host there. I've captured you for a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure that we did get that information. Provide as much information. We'll have more. Go ahead, Frank. Jan,
okay. I wanted, because you are representing, or you are running for my state congressman, and I'm so happy you are. I think it's important for anybody from West Virginia that we go back a little bit to the J6 and explain what happened when they kicked you out of Congress.
Yeah.
Because I know that when I read your story originally, you weren't representing me within your congressional district, but your story really inflamed me of what they did to you, because there was no reason.
Well, so there's a lot to unpack there. What it really comes down to is we have too many politicians in politics. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We need more patriots to get involved at every level of politics, from local level all the way up through the presidency. But the reason I say that is the other members of the West Virginia House, they caved to the media pressure. You got to think they'd never experienced any sort of media pressure like we experienced surrounding January 6th, because I was the first person arrested. We're one of the first people arrested, the first day of arrest anyways. And so they caved to that, and they were going to vote me out of the office. And I was told at the time if they voted me out, I could never run again. If I resigned, I could come back and run again in the future. And still don't know if that's 100% true, but it seems would be accurate, because if you're voted out, it's the same as like an impeachment, I guess. And so, and it was that was an emotionally draining, to say the least. I can't even put into words what it's like to be fighting for your freedom, and you're fighting against the most powerful, corrupt government in the history of the world, who has unlimited resources, and you're just an average person. It would be difficult for millionaires to fight some of these legal battles, let alone an average person with a young family and doesn't have the financial resources to kind of do that. And so I was kind of stuck in a situation. It's like, I need to fight for my freedom. I need to be there for my family. I don't know if I can do this and represent 50,000 people at the same time if they didn't vote me out of the office. And ultimately, they came and handed my attorney 2 different press releases. They handed a press release of them voting me out of office, and they handed my attorneys a press release of me resigning. And my attorney looked at me and said, if this one hits the media, it's going to be used against you in court big time, and it's going to make it a lot harder for you to stay home with your family and to not serve as long in prison, and this one's going to help us. And so that kind of was the deciding factor there. I came to a point where I had to swallow my pride, if you will, and put my family and my freedom first, so that I could circle back and live to fight another day, which is where we're at today.
Okay. Everyone went quiet.
Well, it's kind of hard to how do you digest all of this? How do you digest a little? Because I'm somebody, I try to be as empathetic as I possibly can when I listen to somebody's story, and I try to put myself in the position that they were in. How would I react? What would I have done? What would I have said? And all the rest of that. So when you hear everything that Derrick's gone through, with this whole thing, and you try to sit and you say to yourself, well, how would I react? I can't come up with a statement in listening to a story in 5 minutes that Derrick had to live through 2.5 years, Or,
well, you got to remember early on, that's when the media was still painting this narrative too, that, you know, protesters had killed police officers and there was this attempt to overthrow the government, all these things. I mean, knowing what I know now, if I knew everything I know now, then I'd have said, forget all you guys. You can vote me out if you want to. I'm not a leaving type of thing, but I didn't know all that. It's all in hindsight. I try to live by a quote of, we should never regret our past because it's what shapes our future. And it's been a big part of my life, that quote has. And I try to live by that as the best I can, because there's nothing you can do about the past. But I'll tell you, the hardest moment of that whole ordeal was when I received the phone call that they were revoking the verbal plea offer and they were hitting me with the 1512 obstruction of official proceeding, because I went in one phone call from, you know, misdemeanors to now I was facing 24 years in prison. I'll never forget, I was standing kind of like in between the kitchen and living room. My wife and my kids are all in the living room on the couch watching a movie, and I got that phone call, and she knew it was my attorney, and she looked at me and said, "Hey, I'll be back in a second." And I went to the bathroom. I just turned on the fan so nobody could hear me. I locked myself in there, and I just started crying. That was the moment that I broke down emotionally, because, you know, I've got two girls. They're the older two, and then I got two boys, are the younger two. But in that moment, I don't know if it's because they were older or what, but in that moment, I just kept thinking, I'm not even going to be out of prison in time to walk my little girls down the aisle and give them away. I'm going to miss out on their entire life. I can't put into words the conversations that you have to have with your family when you're facing 24 years in prison, your young family, having to have a conversation with my wife of, like, I might not be here. There's nothing I can do about it. Like, in some ways, it's more cruel than death in some ways, because, I mean, I'm sitting there thinking I'm going to be locked away and my family's out here living their life, trying to live without me. And I can't even begin to put that into words for someone to understand what that feels like.
Well, you're not the only person who's getting sentenced. Correct. You're getting sentenced to go to jail. Your wife is getting sentenced to being alone. Your children being sentenced to not having a father. You know, not having somebody to raise them for however long that is. And we also have to take into consideration the fact that what they're trying to charge you with is so ridiculously and totally out of the realm of common sense. You were very unfortunate. I think what happened with your situation is your profile, who you were at the time, probably played an awful lot into them trying to make an example out of you.
100%.
Here we go. We're going to take a state rep. This is how fair our justice system is, that nobody's above the law, that here's this state rep from West Virginia. We're going to make him pay the price. And what makes you think that you know, the guy who works at, changing oil at Jiffy Lube, you know, who went to Washington to protest because, you know, hey, he felt like he's getting the shaft. What option does that guy have?
Yep, I was the highest ranking government official they could get their hands on, and they wanted to make an example out of me for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's also to point out, we hear a lot of the J6ers who are being held in Washington. Tell them your situation, Derrick, and how they isolated you. No sound, Derrick.
Sorry, I hit my mute button. So, you know, I was considered one of the most high-profile January 6th prisoners just from all the media coverage I had from being an elected official and everything. And all the quote-unquote, if they deem you as high-profile, they do not allow you to go to prison close to home. And so normally, normal people who go to prison, they get to go to prison close to home. And so for myself and a few others who are considered quote-unquote high-profile, they sent me to prison in Michigan, which is over 6 hours away one way. There's a prison 20 minutes from my house, same level of security and everything. And I passed multiple others on the way up there. They wanted me to go over 6 hours away because they said it was to go to prison close to home would be a security risk for the prison due to all the media coverage. So just another way to try to punish you and your family.
That's just a vindictive move to punish your family, to punish your wife, and to punish your children.
Yep.
That's what it is, to make it harder for you to get visitation. You know, the rapists, the murderers, pedophiles, everybody else can get their visitation, you know, can probably get conjugal visits, you know, but God forbid a guy who walked in and fist bumped a friggin' cop. God forbid his family gets to see him once every couple of months while he's, serving time for bullshit.
Well, and on that same note, so if you are a rapist or a murderer or even a child sex offender or whatever, all of these people get off of probation early. The worst case scenario for a child rapist or anybody is 2/3, meaning if you got sentenced to 3 years of probation after you serve your prison time, you serve 2 years and you get out. Most only serve half that amount of time, assuming that they're following all the rules. But there are some judges that are deemed the hard judges that are 2/3 judges. And I say all that. Every single January 6th political prisoner is being forced to serve every single minute of probation. None of us get off of probation early, and they refuse to revoke and remove the jurisdiction from DC. So once again, a child molester or whatever, all of their probation gets sent back to their local jurisdiction, like their hometown area, to be serving that probation. For January 6th political prisoners, even though I live in West Virginia and my probation officer is here in West Virginia, if I get in trouble of some sort, I go back before a DC judge because my jurisdiction is still in DC, and I can't get off early at all. Not a single J6er has been granted a single minute of early release from probation.
All right. Now let me ask you this question, because I want to try and figure out a way what the schedule overlaps are. Are you still going to be on probation when you get sworn in?
Assuming that unless President Trump wins and gives me a pardon, then that would be correct. My probation, I would still be on probation while driving. I would have to get, this is funny, I would have to get permission from my probation officer to go to Congress to serve.
Well, I was going to say, you're going to make it awfully convenient for the judge there to see you, and he can just, subpoena you at your chamber.
Yeah.
Well, should mention, there's nothing in law that says you can't do that.
That is correct.
So even if that is the case, there is no law, no regulation that would prevent that from actually occurring.
Correct.
If it had
and
to
actually, they
way.
have to allow me to go because I would be constitutionally required to be there. So they wouldn't be allowed to keep me from going there either. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a good case study. I'll be the guinea pig.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there something vast for? Well, Marshall's not here, so vast. You have to remind me. That persons serving in Congress are not, technically supposed to be able to be arrested for certain things. While they're in the commission of their duly appointed service.
So long as you're acting in regard to your duties, your obligation, then yeah, you're basically untouchable.
Yeah, so find out what rules you can break on probation while you're on the House floor, and give a nice thumbs up for the judge. We're gonna bring in our friend Dalgrim has been in the green room waiting backstage. He wanted to come in and pose a couple questions to you too. Yeah. Dal has been a frequent guest as of late, and he's a very opinionated and informed voter. Dal, welcome back into the show this evening. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, and I'm not a statist or a federal employee, so not a fan.
Dal, before you start, are you going to ask a question about climate change?
Soon, but not immediate.
Okay, I had one too, but okay, go ahead.
No, actually, the question I was going to pose to Derrick is my wife and I saw the announcement put out by President Trump when he was leaving about the rally on January 6th. And when you went down there to be part of that historic moment, because that's how we felt about it. We wanted to be there for just to chronicle the history of it, because he was one of the best presidents that we've had in our lifetime. We were very sad to see him leave office, and circumstances prevented us from going. But after the whole business with January 6th, we were appalled to see the behavior of the government. When you went there initially, was there a sense that it was more that things fell off, I guess is the best way to put it? while you were initially there, not afterwards from everything that was happening to you, but when you were first there. Did it feel like a historic moment, or did it feel like a trap?
It felt like a historic moment for me because I was on the east side of the building, and so I've spoken to many others who were on the other side of the building, kind of more in the chaos of everything, and so quite a few of them have said that as the day was progressing, it started to feel more like you're talking about, like it was like something's off here, and it's just some of the things that they were seeing and everything. But for me, no, I didn't see any of that and get that feeling at all. I was on the other side of the building, so it was all surreal to me when I got back into cell phone service and started seeing some of the chaos of violence and destruction. That's when I was like getting nervous, but not in the moment. It was only when I started seeing the other things that took place that day.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, because when I was talking with family up here, and a lot of people had reservations about going down there. In fact, I was talking with my mom, and she was like, "Are you sure you guys really want to go?" And I could hear the relief in her voice when we told her that we had car trouble, so we weren't able to get down there. She's like,
I was
thank
worried about
goodness.
Antifa, Dal. I was worried about Antifa for sure going into that day. That was
Mhm.
really the only concern I had. In terms of concerns, was that Antifa or some left wing group was going to come there and attack conservatives. That was my concern.
Yeah. No, I think that would be a pretty legitimate concern given everything that we had seen throughout the year.
Yeah.
I know that we had talked about it, that we had mentioned it, that the possibility was there that there would be counter protests and they might try and get violent. But then you see the stories coming out about people being pursued by our own government, and it was surreal. It really was. I couldn't fathom an America that was being portrayed in Washington, D.C. during that moment.
Well, they're still pursuing people. They're still arresting people. It's every week. I mean, it's really crazy, and they've expanded it beyond January 6th. I think January 6th was kind of like their test run as to what they could get away with, and now they're going after parents who speak out at school board meetings. They're going after pro-life activists. They're going after the guy who made memes on social media. I mean, they're really going after so many different just conservatives in general right now are under attack in this country by our own government.
Podcast hosts.
Yeah, podcast hosts. I think the irony, though, is that you're not just seeing conservatives now. It's anybody that's going to speak out against the narrative. And I believe that fairly soon, a lot of these more extreme leftists, and I don't mean in the violent sense, I just mean more in the dissident sense, they're going to start feeling the pinch as the people that they idolized now cannibalize them, because they're the useful idiots. They're the people that are going to be purged and first against the wall when power is consolidated, if this authoritarian trend continues.
No, what's the phrase? The last one to feed the alligator winds up on the menu.
Speaking of alligators, did you guys see that awesome poster about the border?
Yeah.
That was heavy metal.
No, I missed that one.
Speaking about the border, you saw the latest vote that came out today, or was it yesterday? If an illegal gets arrested for DUI, convicted of DUI, Democrats will refuse to deport that person.
They're refusing to deport the guys in New York who beat up the police officer and then let him out with no bail, and they're walking down the sidewalk with both middle fingers up in the air.
Well, that piece of crap attorney general got confronted on the street by a New York Post reporter this afternoon. He ran over to his car to get into it. How the hell are these people going to sit there and talk about, oh, they're for justice, they're for justice, they're for justice? Listen, I grew up in New York City. If those two cops were my father and his partner when they were on the job, you wouldn't have to worry about the district attorney going in and filing, charges against anybody. Well, it would have been, you would have saw the story, and then that would have been the last you ever heard of it.
True, those were the 70s, but today Hochul, who was in New York on the subway, trying to convince people that the subway system is actually working, even though it's losing money.
Oh yeah, she pulled a Bloomberg.
She said that while she was just trying to distract and talk about the MTA, which is still a losing money problem for New York State, she says that, oh, we're going to hold them accountable, and this was horrific of what they did. Meanwhile, sources, credible sources, I believe ABC News, noted that 5 of the individuals jumped on a bus and went to California using another name. And 7 of the individuals have been arrested on various violent crimes over the last several years. So
here'd be an interesting fact to find out from Hochul. Was she on that subway without security?
No, she was completely surrounded by security.
Yeah,
well,
that would be like
that's why it was great.
Botox, please. Those two things going hand in hand. Listen,
guys, I know Derrick's got to leave soon, so I would like to give him the floor to.
That's what I was just about to let him. That's what I was just about to say.
Let me ask one question before, and then no problem at all.
Just like a reporter.
This is what I do. Obviously, climate change is a very big issue. It's a primary issue of the Biden-Harris administration and many progressives, especially in Congress. Currently, the United States is the global leader in greenhouse gas reduction, more than all of Europe and England combined times 2. West Virginia, though, has been somewhat less, how can I say, they're not quite matching up to what the progressives would like. Obviously, West Virginia, major coal industry, major energy production for the United States. If you are elected, how would you resolve that conflict?
Well, honestly, I wish that West Virginia would grow a bigger backbone. I think that we've played too nice with the climate change cult people on this issue. We need to get back to mining our coal and burning coal and everything else, and tell the federal government to come stop us if they want to stop us. But we're not going to quit. We're going to do whatever it is that we want to do, because it's not any of their business. And so the climate change is a hoax. It's one of the greatest hoaxes of all time. Al Gore is goodness gracious, maybe the greatest grifter of all time. It started off as global warming, and then they changed I think actually in the 70s, it started off as though we're waiting on an ice age of some sort. And now where it's climate change, because the climate is always changing. It's going to be warm tomorrow or rain tomorrow. And the climate is always changing, so they can blame it on that every single time. So the left is really smart in how they label things. But it's a hoax, and there's absolutely zero proof of man-made causing climate change, if you will. And look, even if we wanted to follow all the ridiculous protocols that they're pushing out there, it wouldn't matter. You got China and India and all these other countries just they're polluting the country at such a high rate it wouldn't even matter. But I'll say this: if green energy technology, I believe in capitalism and the free market. And so if they can compete in a free open market, or people just want to willingly pay more, I support the freedom to do those things. What I don't support is taxing natural resources, natural energy, and using those tax dollars to turn around and prop up and subsidize green energy companies. It's false. It's fake. They cannot compete financially with or even efficiently. And look, like I said, I think what Elon Musk is doing is pretty cool. He's doing a lot of neat things. And I think that long term, it's probably a pretty good idea to look at alternative uses. I think it's crazy to stick our heads in the sand and say, no, we're only going to use coal. But I think it's equally as dumb to say we're never going to use coal again. And so I think that we normally, in a normal time, you would have a transition period where what you would see is, you're using all this coal and gas and oil, and then the green energy comes onto the scene, and over time it would, do this in theory and replace. But what happened is they said, well, we got to tax the natural resources and subsidize the green energy. So we just all of a sudden went swoosh, all in like 2 or 3 years time. They can't even keep California. They're doing rolling blackouts as we sit right now. And that's without all the other cars they're wanting to plug in, and the gas stoves that they're trying to get rid. This is crazy. And so I believe in freedom. I believe in the capitalism. I believe in the free market. And if it can compete on an open free market, then let it compete, and I support their freedom to do that.
Okay, so I'm not quite understanding the answer to my question. So if you're elected, are you going to support introducing more green energy to West Virginia, support more maintaining the level currently and maintaining coal production, or something otherwise? I wasn't clear.
No to both of those. I'm going to propose that we open up the gas and the coal and completely. I don't think that keeping status quo is the answer. Definitely don't think that bending the knee to these climate change cultist people is the answer either. So to answer your question, I think that the issue is we have too many Republicans, especially from energy producing states, who are attempting to appease the climate change cultist people. I'm not here to play patty cake politics. I'm not here to compromise with them. West Virginia needs strong leadership, and the federal person can't do this, but our governor and whoever else, they need to grow a backbone and say, we're going to build coal-fired power plants. We're going to put our people back to mining coal. We're going to drill for natural gas. And if you don't like it, then you can come here and you're going to meet our National Guard the same way that you're meeting the National Guard in Texas right now on the border. That's what I would do is if I was in charge of West Virginia. Look, San Francisco and these other states can say, we are a sanctuary city and you're not allowed to come here and deport people. Well, West Virginia is going to be a sanctuary state for natural energy resources. That's what we should do. And just tell the federal government to go kick rocks and go pound sand. We're not here to appease them. The federal government was created by the states and the people, not the other way around. And it's about time that we return this power back to the states. We got to get rid of these three-letter agencies. They're unconstitutional. We have unelected bureaucrats who are running our country behind the scenes right now. For instance, the ATF, every single gun law in existence is unconstitutional. And therefore, the ATF, the EPA, the Department of Education, all these places, they need to be defunded and abolished, return that power back to the states, back to the local communities where there's actual accountability, and you and me and we the people have the power.
Okay. That clarifies for me, and I thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
As a quick follow-up, I wanted to know, so you're not averse though to organic innovation when it comes to energy production?
Correct.
Okay, so somebody say like nano nuclear, which is trying to create a vertical nuclear portable mobile reactor system. If they can prove that it's viable, that it's safe, that it's innovative, and easily I don't know what the word is, easily hooked up, I guess, that could be put on the grid, then you would be okay with like using, say, state funding to help move that research along.
I don't know about state funding. I don't believe in the government picking winners and losers. I believe in the free market I think that anytime the government starts picking winners and losers, I wouldn't want them picking coal. I would not approve of the government coming in and saying, we're going to subsidize coal to get the coal industry going. I think that would be wrong as well. I think that the free market and capitalism will take care of that. Our government, in terms of the federal government, state government, totally different. So to answer your question from the state government, maybe. But the federal government has very limited powers and roles.
Correct.
Supposed to, anyways. And I believe that we got to get back to the Constitution and limit the powers of the federal government. So unfortunately, there's so many times people get there and they're like, well, that's something I believe in. I'm cool with the federal government paying for that. I think that is wrong, even if it's something that I agree with, because on principle, it's not the role of the federal government. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And I actually meant it from the aspect of state legislature, not from
I would be open to that as a state legislature. I would have to obviously see what that would look like and entail. But I mean, from a state standpoint, that's a totally different conversation as from where I sit, anyways. In terms of the roles.
So for from a federal standpoint, since that's where you're going to be, what would you think about currency? Would you be willing to restore, say, a silver and gold standard as it was in the Constitution?
Yeah, I would love to repeal the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which would privatize the Federal Reserve, and it's once again a genius name. Federal Reserve, it's privately owned, as we all know, and the moment the money's printed, we owe a tax on it and interest on that. But yeah, we got to get back to having some sort of accountability there. The gold standard, I think, as far as I know, is probably still part of the Constitution. But once again, we've got so far away from the Constitution, it is Absolutely ridiculous. We need to fight, scratch, and claw for every inch we can, going backwards to get as close as we can to the original intent of our founding fathers when they formed, created the Constitution and formed our country.
Amen.
In terms of the role of the federal government, I should say.
Too bad you're not running in New York. I'd vote for you.
Appreciate that.
You could always move, though.
Well, I think they're on the same subject here, kind of. I think that one of the biggest issues in our country right now, when you really get into conservatives and liberals or whatever, all these different names everybody has, I think that you can trace most of this back, not everything, but most of this can be really traced back to there's a very noticeable split in ideology. And that split, in my opinion, starts at there are some people who believe that our rights come from the government. And then there's a lot of us who believe that we have natural, inalienable rights, and the Constitution was written to prevent the government from infringing on those natural, God-given rights. And so I think that's the biggest, one of the biggest differences in terms of ideology in our country. If for people who believe that our rights come from the government, they now look to the government for safety and to protect them and to give them a job and all these other issues, where that's not the role of the government. Once again, the federal government has so few limited roles, and they don't do any of them. they do exact opposite. I mean, like, for instance, one of the roles is to secure the border and protect our country. So it's like, stop worrying about all these other things and just do one of the few handful of things that you're supposed to do. Balance a budget. These are things that they're supposed to do, and they don't. And then on the budget, think about how terrible these people are at balancing a budget and spending money. They literally steal the money of every single citizen in our country, and we're still $34 trillion in debt. It's amazing.
And that's because of the way they spend the money, and so they run themselves into a deficit. Would you be willing to work with, say, the Senate with Rand Paul per se?
Oh, 100%. So when I ran for State House, I was endorsed by Young Americans for Liberty, which was originally started as Students for Ron Paul back in the day, and then after Ron Paul's presidential run, they changed it to Young Americans for Liberty. And I'm a Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, constitutional conservative type of Republican.
That's great. We definitely need more of that.
Agreed. But here's the thing, though, man. We got to start flipping our red districts red. And what I mean by that is there's I'm just going to guess 15 to 20 states at minimum that no matter who wins the primary, they're going to win the general election for U.S. Senate. So in the Senate, imagine instead of having one Rand Paul, imagine we have 30 Rand Pauls in the Senate. We could do that if conservatives got focused on primaries. We could have 30 Rand Pauls in the Senate. At the same time, there's about 70 to 80 congressional districts the same way in the U.S. House side of things. Doesn't matter who wins the Republican primary, they're going to win the general. I happen to be in one of those districts. And so imagine if we had 70 to 80 Rand Pauls or Thomas Masseys or whatever in the U.S. House. Man, that alone would make such a huge difference in the policy that's coming out of Washington. We have the districts. We have the numbers to do that. We just are not electing the correct people in the primaries in those super red districts.
Do you think it comes down to messaging?
It does. And money.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think a lot of it, same thing happens with libertarians. You get these diverging opinions about what is libertarianism, and you can never seem to get them to all coincide on any sort of common ground. When it comes right down to it, and I've had this discussion many times with people in my area, is that the common core for America should be our principles of liberty first.
Yeah.
Always. The natural and inherent rights that we are born with, that the Constitution secures for us from government, should be the one place that we can all agree. And yet, because of media, because of spin, because of varying opinions that people don't seem to want to let go of or change their minds on, they miss the core, and we get what you see now, like the infighting between the mainline RNC and the rest of us.
Well, and there's so much money involved, man. It's so hard. We got to remember when our founding fathers, when you get back to the beginning of our country, the people serving in Congress were everyday American citizens of that time.
Mhm.
It's very rare to have an everyday average American. You don't see a truck driver making $70,000 a year running and winning a U.S. congressional seat. It doesn't really happen, unfortunately. I think our country would be a lot better off if we did have more everyday Americans. And really something to look into is there, and I don't know the exact language and where it's at, but there's supposed to be way more congressional members than we have right now because it's supposed to be based on population. And I think if you did
Correct.
that, gets that back close, because like I'm running to represent 700 and 800,000 people or whatever, whereas I'm supposed to be, when you go back to the original intent and the numbers, I think it's like, I don't know, 30, 40,000 people. Totally different situation in terms of representation. And so I think that we need to get back to that, because then you could actually win some of these races without a lot of money. I tell you, that's been one of the most frustrating parts for me as someone who's running for and in it for what I would consider to be the right reasons is having to fundraise. I mean, and like I said,
Yeah.
I'm doing pretty well. I out fundraised my Rhino incumbent opponent last quarter, but that's not what this is. This is not supposed to be a fundraising battle of who can raise the most money as who gets elected, and that's what a lot of these races turn into, unfortunately.
It's not like something that you can just do with a bake sale. Like
Correct.
You gotta do a lot of schmoozing, and that.
But this way, I've raised over $300,000, and I'm still going to get outspent drastically by my opponent. But I mean, I've got enough to compete now, So it's like, it's crazy though. Like that should never. And I live in one of the cheapest congressional districts in the country. There's some congressional districts, $3 million is not even really enough to compete. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, New York 22nd normally goes somewhere around 5 million. The average race in America is usually about $500,000 to $750,000 for a race. Just to give some context for the people.
Yeah, and some of these Senate races are going over $100 million now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what this is supposed to be about, and that's what it's turned into. And I don't know the answer. I'm not going to claim to have, and I hate complaining about something without a solution, because that's just complaining. But it is concern, and basically what has happened is everyday Americans do not have a seat at the table, and that's what we need, everyday Americans. And it's nothing against the people in DC. Even you've been in there, and we need term limits. You've been in there long enough. These people don't understand the consequences of the cost of milk, bread, and eggs going up, the cost of rent going up, the interest rates going up. They don't understand that on the same level as someone who's, working paycheck to paycheck, trying to make ends meet, and a single mom who's working 2 jobs and trying to take their kids to youth sports and all these other issues like that. They don't understand that. They're so far removed from that world. It's like me trying to explain or understand the life of an Ethiopian. It's just impossible to wrap my head around that.
I have a question that I just thought of from your speech last week. I believe it was last week that I went to. Talk to us about election integrity.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'm endorsed by Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy. Everybody knows I'm endorsed by Mike Lindell. I'm endorsed by General Flynn, Veterans for Trump, Oil and Gas Workers Association. So we got some good things there. Obviously, being endorsed by Mike Lindell, I believe that we've got to get rid of the machines, move to paper ballots, counted by hand on one day of election. But what I tell everyone is the biggest thing. Whether someone else, when I speak to someone on the left who says the election wasn't stolen, I don't argue with them. I'm like, that's fine. You're allowed to have an opinion. But I think that everybody at the very least can agree, at the very least, what happened in 2020 and probably even in 2016, because the left was saying it then, what has been stolen is the trust in the process. So it doesn't matter if the election was really stolen or not. When you have over half the country, or even half the country, or even 25% of the country who believes that it was, we have an issue. And so we should be, as a group, Republican, Democrat, whatever, we should be sitting down and saying, what can we do as a collective to restore trust in the process? And I think that starts with transparency and being open. Obviously, I have my opinions and what I believe needs to be done to get there, but I think that we could all agree that trust in the process has been stolen along the way here, and that's a major issue in our country right now.
Yeah, no one's really addressing that. I find it interesting. I hope people are paying attention to this, because if you have been, so far we've been covering term limits. We were talking about reducing the national debt. That's what happens when you remove the EPA, the ATF, when you get rid of the Fed. We've been talking about immigration, illegal immigration to be specific, and border security. That's national security. We've been talking a little bit about election integrity and the ability to vote, and how this is affecting the American people. We've been talking about energy and climate. We're talking about J6. Do you notice these are massive issues? That's a conversation. This is what happens when you have the First Amendment actively involved. One of the things that we haven't talked about, though, in all of these different subjects, obviously, we're seeing the military. Huh?
Did we talk about Taylor Swift yet?
You can. I don't even know who it is. I don't pay attention to pop entertainment crap. Obviously, the United States, Army has missed its recruitment levels, and it's actually dropping its requirements to get a dumber military so they can just fill the numbers. Navy missed the numbers. Air Force missed their recruitment numbers. Marine Corps, of course, did not. Hello, my Marines. But this is all happening at the same time that we're now seeing more difficulty in the world. Obviously, Ukraine. Obviously, we're seeing the issue with Hamas has 22 hostages. They're attacking Iran, their parent, pulling the strings of the puppets there, have been enabling attacks against the United States, over 170 different attacks in Jordan, Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah, Houthis in Yemen. If you are elected, would you support funding Israel? Would you support funding Ukraine? Would you seek to fund instead the United States military, or enhancing the military? What would be your focus of those three?
Yeah, good question. And I got to go after this one, but I'll give you a detailed answer. But my focus is always America first. So I would definitely like to focus on our own military. We have our own issues, to your point of missing recruitment numbers and everything. And I think a lot of that has to do with them just going to the DEI route. And you have these people who are just mentally unstable being placed in positions of power in our military, which is a concern. They're hosting drag queen story hours on military bases. I mean, this is a joke at this point. And something that needs to be addressed. I think one of the other probably just as big of an issue is, I think that young people are seeing how our veterans are treated in this country. Name as if you're a young person and you're seeing how our veterans are being treated, why would that encourage you to want to join the military? I think that our veterans should be treated so well that there are young people out there who are looking at that and say, you know what? I'm going to join the military for nothing else. I know when I'm 60, 70 years old, or I need some in my 40s, 50s, whatever, I'm going to be taken care of. And I think that comes back to, as a country and as federal representatives, we've got to make our veterans a priority. I take my grandfather to the VA all the time. It is really sad watching our veterans who fought for our country having to fight just as hard for basic medical treatment in this country. I spoke to a gentleman just yesterday here in my district who has been fighting for years trying to get surgery on his knees from he has issues with his knees from the military. He's in his 70s now and he's trying to get help. I mean, this should not be a we have homeless veterans, which I know is a totally other issue, but it's like we've got to make our veterans a priority. And it seems like it would be difficult to do, but it's really not. When you think of all the billions of dollars that we waste, not only sending to other countries, but I mean, just wasting on stupid studies. How do bats act when they're on cocaine or whatever it is? Yeah. Why are we funding these things when we have military veterans who are doing without in our country? That really frustrates me and makes me upset to think about those things. And so I think that Republican, Democrat, whatever, we should come together. And I think that the military funding and the funding of veterans should not be held hostage by either side, and both sides do it, Republicans and Democrats both do that, to hold that hostage, to negotiate, to try to get other things. I would like to see us at the beginning of the year sit down and just go ahead and make that a priority and fund that separately. So when it gets time to potentially have a government shutdown over all these other things, that is already taken care of. You're not going to use that as a negotiation tactic. Our veterans should not be used as political footballs, and that's how they're being used in our country right now. And it's, quite frankly, it's really disgusting. And then the other thing is, I think that everyone who was kicked out of the military for refusing the jab should be given back pay, whether they join the military or not. They should be given back pay, and then they should be offered the opportunity to come back to the military if they want to. But even if they don't want to, I think they should be compensated for being kicked out over their religious freedom. And so there's a lot of, it's really discouraging. We got a long ways to go to start taking care of our veterans and our military members. And I think if we start doing that and making them a priority, I think some of and get the politics out of the military. I doubt there's anybody who's laying down in a bunker right now over there in another country being shot at. I doubt they care if the person beside of them votes Democrat or Republican. You know, they want to know they're going to have their back. They don't care if they pretend to be a man or what. Those are not the major issues. They want to make sure they're trained and they're going to have their back. But I think if we take care of a lot of those things, I think a lot of the recruitment issues would take care of themselves.
Just going to add one caveat to that, Derrick, about supplying back pay to all of our military members who were erroneously stripped of their service because they refused to get an experimental vaccine put into them. You know, you said they should all be given their back pay. You're 100% right. However, I think there's one thing you got to add to that. It shouldn't come out of the American taxpayer's pocket. It should come out of the pockets of the people that put these men and women out of a job. It should come out of the pockets of the politicians who voted for this crap.
Yes.
The ones who wrote the legislation that proposed it. And if you want to go any further, let it come out of the campaign coffers of the RNC and the DNC for every single one of these people that voted to take our heroes and put them out on the street for exercising their religious liberty. And the American people have got to get to a point where we stop paying for the mistakes
Amen.
made by our politicians when those mistakes are not being done out of good nature. They're being done maliciously to fit an agenda.
Yeah.
The politicians got to start paying the price for this, not us. How many politicians do we get caught up in, drug scandals, politician scandals, this, that, they get this lawsuit, that lawsuit. We pay the bill for it.
Yep.
Sex in the Senate.
We pay the bill.
And on the same note, we got to get back to Congress. Once again, they have limited roles and they don't do any of them. One of them is Congress is supposed to vote and declare war. And I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. Both sides have done it. Both sides are guilty of it. Unconstitutionally, just throwing us into these endless wars. It's ridiculous. And it's a slap in the face of our military members who have signed up to defend our country. And once again, that goes back under the same umbrella of just taking care of our military members. And I think a lot of these recruitment issues would take care of themselves.
By the way, people who are wondering about that and saying, what war? I think you're referring to Joy Reid of MSNBC, as she on Hot Mic National News mentioned that Joe Biden had started yet another war, in referring to the attack against the U.S. military members killed in Jordan.
Absolutely. It's
Derrick,
ridiculous.
I know you got to go.
Yeah.
I want to personally thank you for coming on the show tonight. I would like to invite you back at some point because I know our other co-founder or Constitution guy probably had a lot of questions he wanted to ask you. And I just think your insight on just any given show we do on a night would be beneficial for people to hear. And
I'll definitely come back sometime and
also giving us updates on the campaign. With that, I'd like to give you a couple of minutes to give us your closing, sir.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you guys for having me. And Jan, thanks for inviting me here on the show. It was good seeing you. last week, and I'm sure we'll be back down in your neck of the woods with many more times over the next part of the campaign here. And so we appreciate you. And like I said, look, I just think it's important for people to remember and realize and accept. I think a lot of people realize, I don't know if we've accepted the reality that we're in a battle for the future of this country right now. And what they did to myself and the other January 6th political prisoners, they were doing it in an attempt to put fear into the American people. They wanted to say, look, if you want to either sit down and shut up and accept the tyranny you're living under, or this is what's going to happen to you. And, I can't get the time back with my family. I can't get back the money we lost or the emotional trauma my families went through, any of those, my prison time. I can't get any of that back. But what I can do is I can wake up every single day and I can refuse to allow this government to use me as that example. And I can show the American people that I'm just an average guy from Southern West Virginia. I took one on the chin from the most powerful corrupt government in the history of the world. I had my name slung through the mud by the most powerful fake news media in the history of the world. But I got up, I dusted my britches off. I'm still standing and I'm still fighting to save this country. And if I can do that, then so can you. So God bless you guys, and God bless America.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Derrick Evans, West Virginia. Hopefully, if all goes well and everybody gets out there and does their part and votes, our next congressman from West Virginia. Derrick, thank you again for being here tonight. If you look in the private chat, you'll see
I just took a picture of it. That's what I was doing. Make sure I got it.
There you go. Follow up on that. It's going to be important.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
All right. Well, sign off with my usual. Derrick, you be safe and shoot straight.
All right. Later, guys.
All right.
Take care, brother. Yeah, we would be very well served having Derrick and another 50 or 60 like him.
Yeah.
Out there. Jan, good job, sweetheart. Good job. Thank you for getting that done. Ladies and gentlemen, Jan Raines is responsible for getting Derrick on the show this evening. Reaching out, making the magic happen. That's our girl, Jan.
Absolutely. I apologize that I didn't have all my prepared questions, or any of my prepared questions, actually, because of my puppy. But I think we got a lot done. Huh?
What's good? He doesn't have the doggy flu, does he?
No, that's what we were afraid of. He's 13, so it looks like his age is finally starting to catch up to him.
Well,
but
boss, I think the time that you have done this type of stuff really showed, because the questions you came up with on the fly were right there. So
he's the best. Hey, he's the best in the business. He's why we got him here.
I listen. I listen to when they're talking, and that makes a big difference. And I mean, really, if people were paying attention, he's talking about basically every top line issue in terms of polling in America. He's covering every issue. He has a position. He's been very clear. And when he wasn't clear, he clarified himself and then went into even more detail about several other issues. So I think that's important to pay attention to.
That's how you have a real conversation.
Yeah.
That's how you
and
really
that's how
do it.
Really get to evaluate, what are they going to do? Well, look at what we've been told. Look at what the plan is, the overall. I think that makes a big difference for people in West Virginia. They should really go back and re-listen to everything he was saying.
I would have liked to, maybe when we get him back on the show, I'd like to ask him another question about his stance on accountability for these people. Because like what Frank was pointing out is that the people that make the mistake are not the ones that are paying for it. And there really has been a lapse in disciplining bad decisions on the part of politicians when it comes to writing bad legislation. We can fight it in the courts all day long, but the real problem are the people that are still in office that don't meet with any consequence of a magnitude to discipline them for those bad decisions. Now, so we're supposed to be able to do that by voting them out, but a lot of times they just stay in and they see no repercussions for whatever it is that they're doing that is abusing the people.
And I'm afraid that that's going to be something that is going to continue regardless of who wins the White House. And I think it's going to be something that gets worse regardless of who wins the White House, because Look, everybody knows I'm not exactly. I'm supporting Trump this time around because I believe that he's the best opportunity we have, both internationally and domestically, at trying to get this country back on track. Best opportunity we have at trying to secure the border. He's not great when it comes to Second Amendment rights. You know, I have my issues with the guy and stuff like that, but I also have a couple issues now.
Bump stocks and red flags were big ones.
Yeah, all that stuff. Everybody who knows me, knows the show, knows I come from a blue line family. Everybody in my family at one point or another carried a shield. Okay. We all carried a badge, we all carried a gun. This is what my family was. In recent years, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, if you haven't opened up your eyes to see what government abuse is and how the government uses law enforcement to, strangle the American people. We saw it. I think a lot of people got a really good dose of it during the COVID lockdowns, when you have a husband and a wife having a lunch on a park bench, and they wind up getting both of them getting summonses. Father's out in the park playing frisbee with his kid, getting summonses, getting locked up. People going to the beach. There's nobody on the friggin' beach. They send 5 cops off after some guy because he's surfing 400 feet off the friggin' sand. There was an example after example of a lot of police abuses. I think when certain departments were given tremendous amount of additional power, they abused it. And I think what happened is you start getting a lot of people, the citizen journalists out there, that are doing First Amendment audits across the country, trying to see exactly what the police will do to violate your rights. It's scary. It's scary to see what people with a badge will do in the auspices of their law enforcement. And every time that these things happen and it winds up going to trial, it's the taxpayer that winds up having to pay the fees because of qualified immunity. You get so many law enforcement officers, and then you extend that beyond, and you go into the politicians. The politicians have immunity from having to pay a price for what they do. The thing that scared me recently is when Trump came out and said he wants to extend qualified immunity for law enforcement and strengthen it. There are a lot of people in this country that get systematically abused by law enforcement, depending upon what they look like and where they live.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to see police powers being extended, enhanced, and protected when you've got a lot of bad people carrying badges out there. We've got to do a better job at policing our police if we want to do a better job of having the police police us. And we look around and we're seeing what's going on with a lot of departments. You either have people want to defund the department or eradicate them completely, or they want to give them all kinds of supreme powers. There's got to be a balance. And I'm afraid of when I hear people say, we have to extend power. I don't ever remember a lot of circumstances when somebody decides to enhance their power that they ever decide to give it back.
Yeah.
And that frightens me.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't it really only the sheriff's department that are constitutionally provided for?
Right. The sheriff is the only constitutional, police department. Every other police department in the city, state, whatever, those are all state or locality, municipality, created departments.
And those police are not held to the same constitutional standards, are they?
You can't. There isn't even a standard in this country about what kind of classes police have to take with regards to the constitutional understanding. You've got departments that have a 26-week police academy, and you have some departments that have a 4-week police academy. You have, in New York City, it takes longer for you to get a license to be a hairdresser than it is for you to get a cop to get a badge. It takes longer to go through cosmetology school than it does. Now, listen, I'm not besmirching the cops in New York City. The rigors of the NYPD, that's a tough job. It's a tough job. It's a tougher job to get on than it is to keep. I'll put it that way. It used to be. It was a tougher job to get because you have the civil service exam and that. My waiting list, by the time my number came up with, I went down to 495 on my list, and then they bumped it back up to 15,000 ahead of me, and then I had to wait till that 15,000 disappeared. To get there, it was ridiculous. The academy is one of the most stringent in the country. Is NYPD?
Yeah, but one of the reasons why is obviously what we saw with the attack down on 42nd Street. By the way, for people who haven't been to New York, that's a massive, major thoroughfare. And those two officers weren't the only two officers in that region. So someone attacking a police officer in broad daylight at 42nd Street, that is insane. It's kind of like what we see with Antifa attacking a police station. It's insane. It is an insane act of intentional, pure violence, and that's dangerous because if they're willing to do that, what else are they willing to do?
Vess, go to Times Square. Go to Times Square on Wednesday at 3 p.m. and just do a head count. Give yourself a quadrant. Pick out one quadrant and give yourself a head count of how many cops you see. On any given Wednesday on Times Square, you have 150 cops.
You don't notice them as much because, again, you're going to have about 5,000, 10,000 people walking past there. So you don't notice it, but yeah, there are a lot.
Yeah, if you stand there with one of them little thumb clickers and just count all the cops that are there, you'll see how many there. So when you see an attack like that being committed in the middle of the day, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
What were all the cops doing? What were they all doing?
I think I know. And I think it's kind of what we're starting to see, which is what you see now on the screen. And I think it's a consequence of us becoming more and more progressive. And we've been seeing this movement. Remember, the defund police movement across the nation, and in particular in New York City, it didn't end. The consequences of it absolutely haven't ended. And what are we seeing? Longer and longer wait times. It takes longer and longer for police to get there. There's fewer police trying to deal with the same amount, if not more, crime. And it takes longer to get everything resolved. And I think that's not just for you and me as citizens, but for fellow police officers in trying to stop this. And I have to tell you, if they're willing to do this to police officers, they have absolutely no fear of attacking you. Again, 6 of the 12 individuals have been in multiple violent crimes already, burglary, robbery. So these are people, they're not afraid of police. They're not afraid of you. They're not afraid of committing more crime. And here they are now taking, what do they do? Now they're doing forgeries, false identities, and they're running over to California. And, hey, California wants them anyway because they're a sanctuary state. But I think that's one of the problems that people don't realize, because we need to fix the police. It's always an ongoing process. Fix the police, make them better, help them to better address the needs of the public. But at the same time, when we do nothing but demonize them, we're not fixing. That's not the fix to the problem. That just creates a new chain of problems. That makes sense?
Well, yeah, plus you're not giving the cops any incentives when you see exactly what our district attorneys and everybody else are doing as far as what the punishment to fit the crime is going to be. Cops are going to say, why am I going to even bother making this arrest? Why am I going to bother making this arrest if the guy's going to be out on the street before I'm done filing the freaking paperwork?
Yeah. Which is a pretty legit question.
These animals that attack these cops, they walked out of jail with no bond. There was no bond set for them, no bail. They walked out, and these cops just still got bruises on them. One cop got kicked in the head 4 times. 4 times. Got kicked in the head 4 friggin' times. I'm sure this guy's suffering from at least a 2nd-degree concussion at this point. His assailant is walking out in the street with no bail. And this guy's still going to be on the medical treatment. And then we have Alvin Brigg over there refusing to answer questions about it. You've got Congress and Senate refusing to even, they won't let tax fraud or Social Security fraud now be the grounds for expediting departure from the country for an illegal. You can't deport them now. You're already illegal. You shouldn't be here. Commit tax fraud, Social Security fraud. That doesn't expedite the process anymore. You can get drunk, drive a car. You can get into an accident. That doesn't expedite it. Nothing.
Well, I think one of the things people really need to wake up to is the fact that if these individuals went out there and just attacked cops in broad daylight, did to them what they did, what are they going to do to the average citizen?
That's my point. Yeah. Well, we know 6 of them, violent crime, robberies, burglaries, muggings. They've been arrested multiple times on this. We know they're violent. They are violent repeat criminals.
And yet, if me, a licensed concealed carry person, happened upon that scene and I see a cop getting straddled by 2 people and a third one kicking him in the head repeatedly, which as far as I'm concerned is attempted murder, and I'm in fear for that officer's life, and I draw my firearm and I pop the guy doing kicks at him, guarantee I get arrested.
Well, yeah, because Hochul thinks that concealed carry is dangerous. By the way, data just came out this week from Ohio on concealed carry, which they just increased. They opened up, and they went the exact opposite way of New York, and allowing individuals to be able to conceal carry and open carry. And oddly enough, crime went down and has continued to go down. New York State took the exact opposite reaction. They took the exact opposite decision, even violating the Supreme Court to try and demonize people. Mind you, New York State won't give you any of the concealed carry data. We have the data from Ohio. It says it makes people safer. They break fewer laws. New York State won't give you the numbers on concealed carry arrests that are involved in violent crime. They will not provide it because I believe it's nascent. There's just no data out there, and they're using it as an excuse. And what are we seeing? Violent crime is a problem. Hochul just had to admit it just recently. She finally admitted it, that it is a problem, and it is a problem that is not going away, as our police force is. It's one domino knocks down 3 others, and we keep getting examples in other states, in other parts of the country. Gee, when people don't go down this progressive DEI-driven mentality, the socialist ideology, they do better every single time. Every time. It's crazy.
But no, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're, Hochul is wanting the control. And the Empire State is trying to become the empire, as small as it is compared to the rest of the nation. And they will not give that up for anything. At the same time that they're trying to defund the police and essentially turn them into legislated thugs for the city, and putting these officers' lives at risk so that the good ones can't do their job properly, you have a whole host of others that are causing people to lose trust in that blue line, which is unfortunate, because I can remember talking with my dad. He used to live in New York City in White Plains, and he said that there were certain areas that people took care of themselves in the communities, but you were always happy to see a beat cop walking the lane, because you knew who your officers were. and they'd tell you, hey, you're not supposed to be there, get home. Or they'd see you at night and they'd be like, hey, you need to, move along, guys. Don't hang out here. But they weren't obnoxious. They didn't throw their weight around.
Every time you turn around now, too, if a cop is doing something because he has feared for his life or he has protected somebody from something, he goes up on murder charges.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And you can tell that these people haven't thought it all the way through, because at the same time that they're calling for the defunding the police, they're also trying to disarm the populace. So it's like, all right, then who's going to come to you? When you're in trouble, what are you going to do? You can't defend yourself and you don't have anybody to call. So now what? You just going to lay down and die?
Well, I wanted to point out something a little bit different, but it's something I saw earlier today, and I was talking about it. I did a short video on it. And what you're seeing on the screen right now is part of the reason why we have so many of these problems. This came from Project Veritas, from the Republican National Committee. And apparently they were trying to hide this from the public. They were trying to cover this up. According to the reporter who put this out, her name was Jen Van Laar. And so what you notice on this screen, the Republican Party, which brings in almost as much money as the Democratic National Committee, okay, where are they spending the money? Well, the Republicans aren't spending it on the voter base, which means they're not spending it on trying to get the votes to change the defunding the police. They're trying to stop the progressive move towards the left. They're not spending the money on that. They're not spending the money reaching out to younger people, those in high school and college, the young 20-somethings that are going into the workplace. They're not reaching out to them saying, hey, being a Republican, being a conservative, being anything but a progressive Democrat, there's another option out there. They're not spending money on that. Matter of fact, they're spending about 1% that Democrats are spending on the youth. Where are the Republicans spending money? 30 times more on limousines, 70 times more on flowers. This is where they're spending their money. And when they do this, when they're buying flowers and limos and spending money on getting themselves guest host appearances on Fox News and One News Network, what's happening? Well, the nation is falling apart. And I'm a conservative Republican. I'm not saying this is a Democrat. I'm calling out the Republicans. That's ridiculous that those numbers exist. That's how they're spending the money when we are seeing all of these problems we're talking about right now. And that's just domestic. Look at what's happening international. They are failing. They got to do better. I think we have to highlight that as well, because that's why we have the defunding the police going on, which is kicking off all these other problems, as well as illegal immigration.
I don't know about you guys, but growing up and watching the Republicans get into office, it always seemed like they were more interested in losing gracefully than actually winning or repealing anything to get back to where we needed to be as a republic.
In New York State, yeah. In New York State, it's about looking good as they lose, because they don't really try to win. They really don't.
Well, even on the national stage, I mean, I can remember when, was it Pennsylvania, and it's the late 80s, and Granted was talking about the race with Michael Dukakis, and we were just talking about it kind of briefly. I was very young.
That was Bush 1, wasn't it?
Yeah. And Granddad was like, I asked him why he didn't like any of Dukakis's ideas, because I had heard some stuff on the radio and I was talking with him about it. And he said, well, I like to have my rights and my freedoms, so I'm not going to vote for him. Not really that, Bush is going to help out, but at least he's a little better than Dukakis. And I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you go for somebody that was just a little less bad than the other guy? It never made sense to me. But it's how the game is played. And as you get older, you recognize it. and you realize that these professional politicians, that's what it is to them, is a game that nets them money and power, or wealth and power, because that can be, it's not just money, right? I mean, they get privileges, they get social standing, they get a whole bunch of other goodies that come along with the rest of it. So that's wealth, that's status, power. And when you see all this, it does leave you a bit disheartened as the average American, thinking, I'm just one guy. The answer is simple. If everybody woke up one morning and decided we're not going to fund this anymore, you'd see a lot of this change in an instant. There'd be a lot of tantrum from the people in authority, but what could they do with no money to operate? They would just be stuck.
Yeah.
But it would take everybody. It would take everybody.
No, it doesn't take everybody. It doesn't. Here's the thing. Human nature. They've done behavioral studies on this before. It doesn't take everybody. It takes 10%. 10%. If 10% are willing to do it, the general rule of thumb is then the majority are in line with that. In general, it depends on subject and issue specifically. But if you have 10% of voters in a party, say rank and file Republicans, and 10% of them are saying, you're spending the money badly, I don't want to give you more money, they will change instantly before those 10% tell all their friends, and therefore the whole thing folds. Same thing with Democrats. I mean, now, mind you, what's the alternative? Well, let's see, more than 10%, 58% of rank and file Democrats have been telling Democrats they don't want Joe Biden. And this is where the establishment, and this is what happens when we don't do this now. If we don't make a fuss now, well, then it becomes the authoritarianism that we see in the Democratic Party, which 58% of their membership are telling them, don't put Joe Biden in. And the establishment going, we don't care what you think, because we're going to invalidate your votes in New Hampshire. We're going to not care what you do. This is how it gets worse and worse. 10% at the start, and if you don't, you'll never stop the dominoes from falling.
Well, it's been a fantastic show. And I don't know, Voss, did you get to see the challenge coin the 5150 gave to Frank?
Yes, I did. I came in just about the same time. Mm-hmm.
That coin is sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I already got a text message from Lori saying, "Where's mine?"
You got to tell her yours is the only one. That's what Keith said. They only struck one coin. It's yours.
If anybody deserves to get one of these, it's going to be her, because I have traveled a lot of miles to be where 5150, and they have been through the competitions and shows and everything else. I've been through a lot of different miles, and Lori has been on most of those trips with me, either as my co-pilot, my driver, or the person keeping me awake, so that I could drive. So I'll arrange something.
You could tell her Christmas is coming.
Tell us about what's happening next week, Frank.
I don't know what's happening next week. I think somebody's coming in as a special guest next week to talk about a book, and somebody's going to be giving us a review of that book. Yes, next week, author and Second Amendment advocate Liz Lazarus, professional Second Amendment. I love people who are actually, when you say, they're professionals in the Second Amendment community. Liz Lazarus is going to be here to discuss one of her books that Jen was kind enough to read and review for us. So we're expecting that to happen next week. Jan is going to be commandeering the show, most of it, the next
That's
week.
good, because I keep forgetting what day it is.
No. Jan is only going to be
I'm gonna
saying
keep adding to your list.
and you guys get the show.
I'm going to keep adding to your list of responsibilities.
It's good that she's coming on next week, because I keep forgetting when she's supposed to come on. Like, I thought she was supposed to be the guest tonight, and I'm like, oh, I'll just let Jan do all the talking tonight. And Derrick instead.
I gotta shoot Liz
Which is
a
fine.
note tomorrow just to verify again one more time that we're still on and everything is good. But I don't think we're gonna have a problem. Liz is a great person, a tremendous advocate for our side. She's a fighter. Both with the brain, the mouth, and with the hands. She's ready to put up at any time to get out there and get the job done. And from what I understand, she's pretty good with a pen and paper. So what typewriter or whatever they use to write books, I don't know.
Well, you're still going to put the review on the website, right?
Of course we are. The reviews
Well,
going to
I
get on the
sent
website.
it to you and never heard anything.
That way, your review is forever, and you could never disavow it.
We want to be able to put the review on the website with clips from her appearance on the show.
Okay.
So we have to have that all assembled as one.
Puppy dog.
You see, that's how these things happen. It's all part of the whole genre of podcasting and websites and stuff like that.
Okay, I was just checking because I never heard any kind of feedback on it. So,
well, Marshall's in charge of the website. He takes care of that. I'm in charge of the YouTube channel. I take care of that. So, yeah, and Marshall, who said he said he was going to be late tonight? Who said that?
Yeah, he put it in Messenger tonight a couple hours before the show. He said he was hoping to get on. So I'm really bummed he missed the show because, like I said in the beginning, I'm pretty sure he had some good questions.
Hoping he's doing all right.
Maybe we can get Derrick back on again.
Well, I know that his job lately has been very, very demanding. He's one of these guys that keeps getting higher and higher and higher in his qualifications, and that makes him more and more and more in demand. And says, I'm not qualified to do nothing. That's when nobody calls me. So there you go. That's why I'm available all the time to do the show. And
you, Frank, are qualified to be a gun guy. That's what your qualifications are.
Oh, please, Dal, if you had even a minute to look at my resume and see what my qualifications.
Wait a minute. We know what your true qualification is. Smart ass.
He has special skills.
Yeah, that I have in spades. But if you had an idea of as holy crap, that's the guy who used to do that. No, we let that guy do it. Yeah.
See, the movie Taken was actually about Frank, but they've got Liam Neeson to play him.
Well, I learned a long time. If you want to do the perfect Liam Neeson impression, all you have to do is say the word banana, but instead of ending it with an A, you end it with ERS.
Bananas.
It's all you do is just like bananas. That's your perfect Liam. I don't know who you are, what you're doing, but I have a very particular set of bananas. So, all right, listen, I'm going to get out of here. You kids all have a wonderful weekend. Vass, give the puppy a hug and a kiss for us. Let her know that we're all, we're all doggy people here.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He's asleep. There he is.
I'm sure Grace is up there right now going, Hokan is okay.
Okay, listen, I want everybody to get a chance. If you check out the range report this weekend, there's a gun that debuted at SHOT Show last week that nobody in the country has a review of it yet, except I did the unboxing review earlier today and put it up on YouTube, and the review is coming this weekend. So the range report, hosted by yours truly, is going to be the very first YouTube channel in the country to have the Rost Martin RM1C 9mm compact pistol review,
which was a really nice pistol, by the way.
It's a brand new American company, American made, American assembled, out of Dallas, Texas. I haven't gotten a chance to take it to the range yet. Just been doing a bunch of dry firing, taking it apart and fixing it and all the rest of that. Thus far, I am extremely impressed by the trigger on this thing. It rivals my Canic rifle. oddly enough. So be sure to tune in for that. Hit like, hit share, hit subscribe, and all the rest of that. Remember to visit us at l1f.us. And if you want, there's information there on how you guys can become a charter member and possibly be the recipient of a laser engraved Henry Golden Boy 22 lever action rifle. Vass, give us a call out give us where you are, what you're doing, and all the rest of that good stuff.
Every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do a live stream with anyone in the public to answer their questions and to deal with a bunch of the issues, like we saw with the RNC today, like we see with what's going on with the police, what's happening right now. We're now attacking Syria and Syria and Iraq, because Iran attacked the United States in Jordan. Does any of that make sense? Not really, but I will explain it on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. By the way, at 12:30 this Sunday, I will be interviewed by Forest Mommy. Yes, that's the YouTube channel, Forest Mommy. And I'm going to be interviewed at 12:30 this Sunday, Eastern Standard Time.
Forest Mommy.
Yeah, her name is actually Jennifer Fensky, but she goes by Forest Mommy. She was a candidate in an election recently, and so she invited me onto her program.
What is the nature of the program? Are we to expect to see you in a loincloth?
What? Oh, God.
Spear checker.
Oh, God. I'm not MASH. No. Anyone who's seen the movie MASH will get that joke. But anyway,
I don't know where Dal came up with that one. I just figured, seeing you sitting in like some nest in a tree with the Forest Mommy, hugging on a pine, and
believe it or not, she's not on the left. She is definitely not a tree hugger. But Forest Mommy.
I'm just not familiar with the program. I just want to make sure that whatever you're getting into, if it's going to be something that's over your head, I got to watch it.
Oh no,
she's also on Twitter. She has a Twitter feed that I follow.
So one of you guys will forward me that link. Once again, before I sign out of here tonight, again, 5150 Optimum Parts. Again, thank you again, Keith, Danielle, Forrest, and David Moore. David Moore. My little leprechaun friend, David Moore. I got a text. He goes, "You didn't mention me on the show." So I had to make sure I said his name 3 times. David Moore. He's adorable. I love that.
You're supposed to say that in a mirror, and then he's going to appear with a pot of gold, right?
Oh, I did that. I did that once. The pot of gold was bigger than he was. Said the point. All right. We're out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Until we see everybody next week, same bat channel, and all the rest of that stuff. I can't say too much of that. That's copyright. You guys will be safe, shoot straight. Everybody who joined us tonight, thank you. We love you, and enjoy the rest of now that the first year of January is over. That was like 18 months of January. We just survived.
It felt like it.
Jesus Christ. God, what a long week. All right, kids. Have a great night. Love you guys.
Good night, folks.